have, we're really pleased to have Ari Copeland here today. But before we go into our presentation, I'd like to just do a little bit of an intro of who we are, and then also just kind of like the series coming for 2022. So please keep your, just like some housekeeping, please keep your mics muted. And sorry, Megan, would you like let people in as they come in? Because I can't, oh wait, never mind. Okay, I'll let them in.
I had a meeting.
So yeah, if you can keep your mics on mute for the duration of the presentation, and then we will open the floor for questions afterwards. So the goal of the speaker series, Diversity in Water, is to highlight the stories of diverse leaders in the water industry in Ohio, and maybe later on we can actually expand this. And actually, Ari is currently based in Kansas City, but he started off his water stint in Ohio, and so it made it really relevant to bring his story to the Diversity in Water series. So in addition to highlighting the stories of our diverse leaders in the water industry, we also want to create this space for our guests to kind of talk about how they got into the water industry, pivotal moments that helped them make that decision, mentors who've helped them, so that, you know, the stories that we're sharing of their own individual journeys and their interactions and perceptions through their journeys can provide some insight to our listeners here today, but also for those who are kind of aspiring to get into the water industry, or who are new, or even those who have been around for a while and are looking to stay engaged and inspired. So this Diversity in Water series is put together by the Ohio American Water Works Association, the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, which Savina is going to talk to you a little bit about. She's the chair. And then also by the Young Professionals Committee, and Megan's going to talk to you about the Young Professionals Committee. So I'll hand it off to Savina to tell us a little bit more about the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and we really encourage anyone who's interested in joining us.
Yes, thank you, Sapna. As Sapna said, my name is Savina Phillips. I am the chair of Diversity and Inclusion Committee for the Ohio American Water Works Association. The Diversity and Inclusion Committee is essentially a group of like-minded people that we come together and we brainstorm strategies and ideas in order to proactively promote volunteer and employment opportunities that encourage diversity and inclusion. We are, in essence, the conscience of the association, I like to say. We promote educational and employment opportunities that celebrate the mosaic of people with a variety of backgrounds and styles and perspectives to bring that to the water industry in Ohio. It's been said that the most successful industries or companies are the ones with diversity. So as the diversity and inclusion, we strive to bring that to the water industry in Ohio. So if you are interested or you have like-minded thoughts and you're interested in joining the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, we will be happy to have you. Reach out to me. And my information, you can reach out to me at Savina Phillips, Savina_Phillips at clevelandwater.com, or Sapna or anyone else within the Diversity and Water Series or Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Okay, thanks, enjoy.
All right, thanks, Savina, for that. And if you don't mind adding your email address to the chat for folks if they want to reach out to you. And with that, I'll pass it on to Megan, who will talk to us about the Young Professionals Committee.
Good evening, everyone. So the Young Professional Committee, our goal is essentially to get people the tools that they need to be successful in industry and to keep people in the industry. So we do a variety of different things around the state, from happy hours to water and wastewater plant tours. We have fresh ideas competition, which is a poster and speaking competition. If you are interested in joining the committee and attending some of our events, the website link is right there. And then I will also put my information in the chat. Just contact me and I will get you hooked up.
All right. Thanks, Megan, for that. And the next person that I wanted to introduce you all to is Dane Elliot. She is a recent addition to our organizing team here. And so I'll hand it off to Dane to briefly introduce herself.
Thanks, Sapna. Hi, everyone. My name is Dane Elliot, as Sapna said. I'm a master's student at Ohio State University, and I got involved on the YP committee of OAWWA sometime maybe last year, about a year ago, as a university liaison. So I was in charge of doing career panels and other kind of events that link students with professionals in the water industry. So in the last couple months, I've been onboarding to the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and am very excited to help out with that and, you know, get started working with all of these people. So I look forward to the event tonight. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you, Dane. And we're really pleased that you decided to join us and are kind of like our bridge to the next generation of future water nerds. All right, so a couple of last pieces of information that I wanted to share with y'all. We do have a YouTube channel. Please do check us out at Ohio Diversity in Water Speaker Series. We have about 6 speakers that we've had since 2020. And we have a lot more that are coming through in 2022. If you have recommendations of people that you think would be good guests of whose stories we can bring to our audience here, please do feel free to email us at diversityinwaterohio@gmail.com. And then, yes, the year has ended, or it feels like it's ended. We're just like 2 months or a month and a half into it. And we've already started lining up our speakers. So our next event is January 13th, and it's at 5:30 p.m. So hopefully we will be able to see you all again in the new year. And of course, we will announce who the awesome guest speaker is. But with that, I would like to hand it off to Ari to take us through his life's journey thus far. Thanks, Ari.
Yeah, thanks, Sapna. I appreciate the welcome. Just trying to get my slides shared here. Can everybody see my screen? And here?
We see the screen with your notes.
Oh, I gotta flip it
Mm-hmm.
somehow. Oops, sorry. All right. How's that?
Nothing's changed.
Hold on a sec.
We'll get it.
How's that?
Nothing's changed.
It worked before.
I think
I think if you
unshare
click the
replays.
down arrow.
Yeah, so it says display settings and hit the down button. And then it should be like presenter view or something.
Well, yeah, I did that. So
Oh, swap presenter view and slideshow, I think.
yeah, sorry. It worked before, I swear.
It always happens this way.
Yeah.
Actually, like,
Let's see. How's that? Did it work?
It worked.
Yes. Sorry about that, folks. Anyways, my name is Ari Copeland. Thank you so much, Sapna, Sabina, Dane, Megan, everybody on the DMIC and the YP committee. Thanks for everything you do. I know this takes work to plan, and I'm really appreciative to all of you. So I'm here to talk to you today, I guess, about my random career in water. Is pretty random. So I hope you're ready for some randomness this afternoon, evening, wherever you are. But I'm just basically going to tell you about kind of like my why in the industry, or my why in general, and how I got to where I'm at, and maybe hopefully where I'm going if I can actually see that far in front of me. So anyways, let's get started. So that's me, current day me. So like I said, my name is Ari. I go by he, him, his, and I'm a professional operator, and I'll talk more about what that means further on in my presentation. But currently I'm located in the beautiful Kansas City, Missouri area. I'm originally from Connecticut, and like Sapna kind of alluded to, I have some ties to Ohio and the Ohio section. So I'll definitely be sharing that with you all. But I currently work as an operations specialist at Black of Each, and you're probably like, Ari, what the heck does that mean? I'm gonna go into that and explain what that means and what that job title means. But just for your reference, I am a dual licensed water wastewater treatment plant operator, and I also have a civil environmental engineering background. So I am on the technical side of the industry. I largely work in wastewater now, but I got my start in drinking water. I've been a member of the association for 16 years, approximately, and I currently serve on the board. So I'm an AWW director at large. So that's a board position that's elected board. And I'm a member of the association level DMIC with SAPNA and a bunch of other great folks from all over North America, basically. And it's a really good group of folks. So that's just a snapshot of today. So when I started thinking about this presentation, I was like, I don't know how I got here. You know, you just start looking back and you're just like, I know what I'm doing now, but how did I get here? Well, you know, I said, why water? Why this? Why now? Why am I here? So I think there's several reasons why I kind of got into the water industry, just from a historical sense of who I am. So just so you know, my father actually was a chemical engineer. He did industrial pretreatment during the 80s. So back when, you know, late 70s, early 80s, back when the EPA was getting established. And there was a couple of speakers actually in this series that talked about that. So he did industrial pretreatment up until he actually passed away. So I had a lot of affinity towards the water industry. He did a lot of industrial pretreatment in terms of wastewater off of a chemical process. So he actually worked in a factory that made rubber. So, you know, I was always kind of tied to this industry historically. My also does battery recycling and various environmental hazardous handling. So I kind of was really tied to the environment early on in my life. I've always really been drawn to things I'm able to give back and save lives. So I was very lucky to kind of grow up with people in my life that told me, you know, giving back to your community is important. You know, my mom definitely gave me a lot of that since I was raised primarily by her. My father passed away at the age of 29. So having that in my own kind of psyche, kind of I feel led me to water. And I always wanted a job where I was always going to be needed. And I always was able to learn and kind of develop new skills and solve problems. So when I started thinking about, okay, well, I'm going to go to college, what should I do? I kind of went the physical science route in the beginning. I actually was a physics major. Most people don't know that for at least the first 2 years of when I went to college. And I enjoyed physics. It was great, but I kind of really was lacking that connection of trying to give back and save lives. And you know, I considered going into pre-med. I actually did consider going into the medical field because I thought, well, I could definitely save lives by doing that. But I met somebody who kind of like pulled me aside and he said, you know, doctors save people individually, but people who treat water and wastewater or go into civil engineering, they save hundreds of thousands of people's lives every day. So that really resonated with me. So that's kind of why I ended up going and getting a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and ultimately getting a master's in environmental engineering. And I went to WPI for my, it's Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's a small technical college based in Worcester, Massachusetts, if you're not familiar with it. And then this is my tie to Ohio and the Ohio section, is that I actually went to the University of Cincinnati for grad school. So I'm a Bearcat. I graduated back in the early 2000s with a degree in environmental engineering. And I actually got to have a lot of really awesome opportunities through that mechanism. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time at that school. I really enjoyed my time being a part of the Ohio section. And that's actually how I got into AWWA. So I kind of love this story. It's always like, whenever I hear, like Dane talking about, they're a student and they're getting integrated into, the section and becoming a part of the section. I really love stories like that because it really resonates with me. That's how I actually got into AWWAs, because of the Ohio section. So like I said, I was a master's degree student at the University of Cincinnati, getting my master's degree in environmental engineering. And I actually went to the Ohio section conference. And this was probably back in 2004. And I think it was in Toledo that year. And I met this person that you see pictured to the right. And you may know her or not. She doesn't live in Ohio anymore, but her name is Isabel Escobar. She was a professor at the time at the University of Toledo. And awesome person, amazing person, very involved in the AWWA student chapter and all the AWW stuff that was going on in Ohio at the time. And she pulled me aside and said, hey, you know what? If you really enjoyed this conference, really like the people that came to this conference, and you really enjoy the water and wastewater industry, you need to be a part of AWWA. So it only takes one person to change a course of someone's life. And I would say she was one of those for me. Like, I really was kind of struggling, figuring out, okay, I'm in school, I'm trying to get a degree, I'm trying to be useful, I'm trying to market myself to eventually be employed, because that's really the whole point of this. But she really kind of took me aside and didn't spend a lot of time with me, but it just goes to show you that 30 minutes, an hour, 10 minutes, a 15-minute conversation can really change someone's life for the better. And it did for me. And I actually still talk to Professor Escobar. I actually sent her a note on LinkedIn telling her I was going to tell the story of how we met and how it's tied to the Ohio section. She was like, oh, Ari, that's great. Send me the link after you record it, because I definitely want to hear it. So I just want to thank her. And I think if we all reflect back on, there's always that person, that brought us into the industry. And I always make it a point to thank them. So with that, like I said, I went to grad school at UC, and I did a project as part of my graduate degree. So I got to actually work at the US EPA, because if you know Cincinnati, the US EPA building is actually right next to the UC campus. So I did environmental water quality research under Darren Lytle, which some of you probably know Darren. Darren's an awesome person. I also worked with Mike Schock for a little while doing various things. But part of what I did while I was at the EPA is I worked under the arsenic demo program. So for folks that are listening to this call that are old enough to remember or working in this industry, as long as me, because I always say I look young, but I've been in it a little bit. The EPA lowered the arsenic limits from 50 ppb to 10. So I was kind of around that time period. So part of the arsenic demo program with the EPA was giving technology to certain places, and in exchange, they would give data to help the EPA develop this best technologies list, the best available technology list. So I used to go traveling around collecting samples from these demo programs and processing them. So, to further add information to that kind of database. I also did a master's thesis on arsenic transport and distribution systems. So pretty much my entire background while I went in school and while I consider this my first job, was really looking at water quality in the distribution system, which back in the early 2000s was kind of more of a bit unknown. Especially arsenic or any kind of inorganic transport. I mean, we look at lead and copper now and all those kinds of things. And if you actually remember, if you've been in this industry long enough, while I was working at the EPA, there was a lead release in DC that was attributed to a treatment change that that utility did in the water. And I actually got those pipes. They were shipped to me and Mike Schock, and we actually were a part of kind of assessing why that was happening. So anyways, I did a lot of work trying to figure out under what water quality conditions do arsenic leak off of lead mains. So that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. The pictures you're seeing here are kind of some of the, this is our sampling technique off of a hydrant. And then you kind of see I had to scrape some of these pipes to get some of these residuals off. And that's really what I was doing, was kind of exposing these residuals to a water matrix of different pHs and phosphate levels to see if the arsenic would actually leach off. So I really enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun. I love research because to me, it's always trying something new, something that someone else hasn't done. I'm kind of all about that. I also helped the EPA with using redox potential measurements to figure out if you had an oxidant or a disinfectant present in the water too. So that was kind of like how I got my start in the industry. It was like very much tied to drinking water, water quality, quality of the distribution system, and disinfection. And I don't know if you give a copy of the presentation, I can always put it in the chat or whatever PDF, but you can actually click on that link and it directs you to the thesis that I wrote while I was at UC. So if you want to check it out, you can. So after I graduated from the University of Cincinnati, I kind of went into consulting in a traditional way. So I got a job at a company called Boyle Engineering, which was acquired by AECOM back in actually 2007. And basically what I did there was just standard project engineering work. I assisted with pipeline alignments. I did pump station designs. I did a lot of wastewater plant permitting, which if you look behind me, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at an aeration basin at a wastewater treatment plant. So I did a lot of those kinds of things. And it was a smaller firm. I would say probably less than 1,000 people, based mainly in Florida. I mean, some offices in California. But that's largely what I did. I did a lot of project execution, spec writing, pretty much whatever came in our door. I even did like a schedule for reclaimed water sprinkling for like a large neighborhood. It sounds like a really boring project, but it had a lot of drama where people actually fight about when they wanted to water their lawns. So I actually really enjoyed going to those meetings. I'm sure the utility didn't, but I enjoyed it. So I did a lot of that kind of work. And then I decided to leave Boyle. And then I went to Black & Veatch, and I call that my first tour because I've worked at Black & Veatch twice. So working at Black & Veatch, pretty similar kind of job. I just assisted with a lot of designs, a lot of permitting. I did a lot of pilot work. So I used to build water and wastewater treatment plant pilots, and I would take the samples off of the pilots, and we would use that information to make a process decision. Mostly on the drinking water side, I did a lot of ozone pilots throughout Florida because Florida has, and actually I forgot to say, both of these firms were located in Florida. I actually worked in the Tampa, Florida office for quite a long time. And you're going to see that I've moved around quite a lot. So I think I've lived in 7 states to date. So now we went Ohio to Florida right now. So basically I did a lot of water quality studies because in Florida, if you don't know, the water there has a lot of H2S in it. So the water from the ground actually smells like rotten eggs. So you have to do a lot of taste and odor control on that water in order to make it aesthetically pleasing to folks. So that's what I spent a lot of my time doing at Black & Veatch. Is basically project civil engineering support / permitting support. But those pilots I really loved. And it's really how I started my love with operations and really kind of thinking about, could I really transition out of an engineering role and actually be in operations full time? That's really what kind of started my progression towards wanting to be more on the O&M side. So, and that's kind of where I talk into here. And I really started thinking, is it possible for me to leave engineering and just do an operations focused career? And, a lot of times when I vocalized that to people, a lot of people were kind of judgy about it. They kind of really didn't want to see me leave engineering. They kind of felt like I was taking like a career downgrade, which kind of really, to me, kind of was like, there's an opportunity to actually advertise the importance of operations and actually having an engineering background in operations and how useful that is. I would say a lot of my clients would stress that if you ask them, but it really started my progression to saying, hey, I don't think I really want to do an engineering job my whole life. I don't know if I necessarily want to always be pulling the drawings together and writing the specs and doing that things. Like, I think I want to be outside and actually see things actually work and troubleshoot problems out in the field. And that's just kind of more of what I enjoy doing. So I was able to, while I was working at Black and Beach, I volunteered a lot and worked nights at various facilities in order to get enough hours to actually get a grade C drinking water license in the state of Florida, which is very hard to do because they don't substitute any education for experience. And that led me to being able to get a wastewater operator license in the following years. And kind of how I got my foot in the door with operations is I helped a lot of people who are trying to get into the profession, especially, people who were trying to get into water and wastewater operations as a second career, ex-wards of the state or current wards of the state, meaning I taught in prisons, and just other avenues just to be able to help other people get into the industry and be in operations too. And that's how I made like a lot of contacts. But I was really kind of stuck. I really couldn't transition into the job I wanted at that time. It just wasn't feasible. So I decided to say, hey, I think I'm going to put my operations career on hold right now and see if I could do something different. That's all I'm thinking. It's like, I always feel, I don't know, an operator always has like the best tool. Well, my favorite tool is a flashlight. And I feel like it's kind of like an analogy or a metaphor for my career. I've always felt like sometimes I'm in the dark, but every time I follow my why or my passion, a big beam of light just comes on and I just follow it. So that's kind of what I did. So I felt stuck and I said, you know what? I think I'm just going to look and see what else is out there. And that's when I actually worked for the American Waterworks Association. So I did a little bit of a career transition. I went to non-for-profit volunteer management, which you're probably thinking, Ari, that's not anything like operations. It still kind of is. You still had to work as a team of people. I still was doing a lot of technical work, and a lot of the work I did was actually very operations focused and worked with a lot of operational people in a volunteer role. So I technically worked as a water quality engineer for the association for about 2 years, and that meant I had to relocate to Denver. So now we're going, I know it's confusing, Ohio to Florida to Denver. Me and Sapna actually have a joke because we feel like we've been following each other around. She's lived in a lot of the places I've lived in, and she's lived in a lot of the places I've lived in, and I've lived in, but all at different times. So it's kind of funny. But anyways, so I was a water quality engineer, and what I did is I worked under the Technical and Education Council. So if you don't know how AWW is structured, they have committees, divisions, and then councils. And then they have the board and the executive committee. So my bosses essentially were all of the volunteers that were on the Education Council. So what I did while I was there is that I managed a certain percentage of the manuals of practice. So I would help volunteers edit those manuals. I would edit them. Most of them were water quality focused. So like, for example, M4 fell under my jurisdiction, which was the manual of fluoridation. Usually most people know M4 because, they have certain kind of emotion attached to it. I also managed a webcast program for the association for a little while, just pulling together content, and I tried to make it more operator friendly and focused during my time there. A large part of my time was really helping plan WQTC, which is the Water Quality Technology Conference. It's the second largest conference that AWW does. So with that, I kind of just really assisted volunteers with projects, them all doing technical things. I really enjoyed that work. I really enjoyed interfacing with volunteers and just people who just wanted to give back. See, it's just kind of this theme in my entire career. It's what can I give back to others? And I really enjoyed interfacing with those people because at the end of the day, I had to work with individuals that I didn't pay and still had to produce an outcome at the end. So I really enjoyed my time at the association. It taught me a lot. Honestly, it really taught me that, it takes a lot of people to make stuff happen and different people to make stuff happen. So I really enjoyed my time there. I did miss working in a technical realm, meaning I missed being at the plant. I missed really being a part of the design process. I missed being a part of that of in-person operations. So a lot of times when I was listening to people talk about their jobs, I really missed it. And that made me say, you know what, I think I need to transition back into either being a consultant or working in utility. So that kind of brings you to kind of present day for me. So what I do now, so like I said, I'm an operations specialist at Black & Beach, and I work in a group, it's a global group for the company. So my projects can be all over the world. Largely, most of my work is based in North America, but I provide commissioning support to water and wastewater infrastructure. So if you're not familiar with what commissioning is, basically that's this really awkward time where the construction's quote unquote done, and we've done all the wet testing, meaning we've run water through all the systems, so we actually know all the equipment works. And commissioning is the moment when we actually accept either the source water that the treatment plant's going to treat or the wastewater that the wastewater plant's going to treat. So basically, I get to have all the fun. So during that time, I have to help train the operators. A lot of times I'm just translating information between engineers, operators, and contractors to get things done. So we can actually make sure that the SCADA system works and that, someone's trending data so we can actually make decisions on the treatment plan and what to do. I also can help people understand how we're going to commission something before that happens, the planner part. I also help with operator training, lots of process troubleshooting, and I'll go into an example of that. And I basically do anything that's O&M focused. And a lot of times how I'm integrated into design, which some of you folks probably largely do, is I'm helping you on the end of that 30% and 60% design where I'm providing input from an operator's viewpoint. Meaning when you design something, I want it to be operator friendly and I want it to be maintainable. A lot of times we just look at constructability. So I provide that lens too. But the fun thing is I travel pretty much all over the United States. So a lot of times I'm looking at this, flying from point A to point B, giving training to operators wherever they are, walking around treatment plants, marking up documents that we've created either as process O&M manuals for your operators to utilize to operate the plant. Walking around processes, making sure things are installed correctly, troubleshooting pieces of equipment that don't work, or usually it's the control system that doesn't work. Sometimes that requires a little bit of graveyard shift. So with the project I'm working on right now, I've spent many nights here just making sure that everything's working correctly, walking around, making sure things don't catastrophically fail. A lot of it's just watching the SCADA system and making sure things are actually operating the way they should be. And if they're not, trying to figure out what. Just going around, getting to see really interesting places. Like, for example, I've never seen an egg-shaped digester before, but my company actually did a project and I actually got to be a part of the commissioning team for that. So that was pretty exciting. And at the end of the day, if you look at that last bullet, I've been to about 45 states and 2 countries outside the United States for work. So I estimated that I probably have traveled almost 400,000 miles for work. So the equator is about 25K or miles or 40,000 kilometers. So I've literally done 16 round trips of the world. And, it's worth it. I really love what I do. I love that I get to interface with people and teach them how to do their jobs better. I really enjoy interfacing with operators. I really care about these people. What they do is really, really vital. And sometimes having an engineering background as well as having an operator's background, I can assess if what's going on is an operational problem or it's actually a design or equipment problem. And sometimes I'm able to assist with that a little bit more and provide that perspective to them. So that's just me hanging out at the BNR basin. That's like probably about 1,000 feet yonder. And actually it's behind me in this picture. And it's right here in front of you. So this is actually a huge part of what I'm doing right now is I'll go to these plants that we actually fully upgrade. And what you're looking at right here is a wastewater treatment plant we just upgraded. It's about a 19 MGD biological nutrient removal. So this is the BNR right here. You got your headworks, your primary clarification. You got a blower structure here. So we're sending diffused air into this structure over here. Final clarifiers, we got some disk filters and we got disinfection. And then we have a whole solids processing side of this. So we got anaerobic digesters and we have dewatering centrifuges and RDTs at this plant. So this, I've spent a really long time at this facility, about 2 months. And we're getting ready. We've commissioned the liquid side of it, but we're getting started to commission the solid side of it. And if I estimated how many hours I've spent on this commissioning, it's about a year of my time prior to any wastewater coming into this plant. So it kind of gives you an idea of how much planning it actually goes into this. So like I said, operations work's never done. What you're seeing is a picture of the plant at night on one of my extended overnight stays. And, you know, sometimes you just have to get into the weeds. So a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm actually trending data. So we actually had this problem happen recently where wastewater treatment plants, they're permitted for ammonia. So this is actually the ammonia coming off the back end of the treatment plant at least a couple of days ago. So we don't really want to be this high. We want to be like 1 milligram per liter or less because we start getting into a permit violation kind of problem. So I get to do my favorite thing is solve a problem, work with the operators. And luckily I got a great team out here with the client. One of the operators out here is taking a sludge judge at a basin. And we were just able to determine that we had a bunch of solids buildup in a basin up front. And that's actually what was causing our problem. So at the end of the day, that's the kind of work I do. And a lot of engineers or people in general in our industry don't understand it. But that's really my role. I'm here to serve a gap between the engineers, the operators, the contractors, and really at the end of the day, the system integrator that puts the SCADA system together. And at the end of the day, it's worth it because this is the outfall of this plant. It's beautiful. We've done a really great job and I'm really appreciative that I get to really be a part of it. So many of them, all of these, you know, it's all a similar story. So yeah, so that's what I do at work. So now I'm going to get into maybe a little bit more of a personal presentation with me, my transition through work. So, you know, we all have personal lives and, you know, I didn't really share much personal things with you during my career, but for me, I started working in the water industry looking like a different person. So I'm a trans guy. So that means that I was assigned female at birth and I identify as male. So my sex at birth does not match my gender identity. So when I started working in this field, people perceived me as a female identified person. So the picture you're seeing to the right is actually the first professional picture I ever got when I worked at Boyle. So that's what I looked like when I got into this industry. So I really do understand some of the struggles that folks have in terms of gender working in this industry and how difficult it can be. I was, you know, at that time, the only one of 2 female technical people when I worked actually in both places. The woman that actually was the other engineer that worked in my office, she was our office manager. So it was quite a big significant gap between me and her in terms of experience. And oftentimes people thought I was an admin assistant most of the time. So I definitely relate to that. I definitely understand that experience. It makes me a lot more empathetic when I am communicating to people because of that, because I often pick up on what people do and say and how that triggers people and how that shows up. So I just want to tell you that's how I started out in the water industry. And, you know, we can see even when I worked at Black & Beach, and that's actually when I did transition at work on the job in 2011, you can see that I was the same person. So just look a little different, that's all. So for me, not only was I navigating the water industry, I was navigating myself. Kind of sounds weird, but it's really true. I was finding myself. And, you know, I have kind of an overlay at the bottom of where I worked during this process. But, you know, for me, the first part of being real, and excuse me, it's very hard, but I had to be real with who I was. And showing up who you are, for some people, really hard. Sorry, it's difficult even today because it's just so real for me, you know? So I had to really come out to myself and accept myself and love myself and be proud of myself in order to have that kind of radiate through my career, because people always kind of think of, when you're not represented or you're different, that sometimes other people hold you back. And that's true sometimes. But for me, a lot of it was myself. It was a lot of fear that I held on to. And a lot of that fear was justified because a lot of people like me don't stay employed after that people know that they're trans. So I really started coming out to myself and just really making small steps towards being real. What that caused was this cascade effect of me having to deal with the physical changes that I need to make and how people were going to respond to that. So I really had to start going to therapy. If you're not aware of it, back then, being trans was considered a mental illness, actually was considered a mental illness up until 2019. So I had to get a mental illness diagnosis to actually start displaying who I really was on the outside and being able to actually change gender markers and actually change how I physically look through medical means. And there's a lot of barriers for trans people to do that at work. A lot of the things that we need are very expensive, and a lot of it's not covered by health insurance. And that was very true for me most of the time working. I'm very lucky. My employer actually does have trans inclusive healthcare, and I'll get into, why that's important, or at least how we were able to do that. But really, at the end of the day, my career kind of was like stalled out over here, folks. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that I really didn't show up as a whole person at work. I really didn't tell people a lot about my life because I lived in fear. Once I kind of said, forget it, I control me. My identity is mine and not other people, and I'm just going to deal with the repercussions of what happens. That's when my career got better. That's when I started really doing what I wanted. That's when I started saying, hey, you know what? This is my life. I'm going to live it, and I'm going to move on. And it created a lot of opportunity for me in terms of personal connections and just really, honestly, just a more deep and enriching career. I just started doing what I wanted to do. I made connections with people, like genuine connections, and they were real and strong. So, but that was something else I was dealing with on top of trying to stay in this industry and trying to actually get into the role I actually wanted. So, navigating the water industry as a queer person can be difficult. I was uncomfortable a lot, but I got used to it. Being uncomfortable for me is not that big of a deal. Just like it is for a lot of people who are underrepresented or sit in a minority or not as the majority within a population. I got used to it. So it made me very adaptable and very flexible. I really just a lot of times go with the flow unless I see something that's wrong, and then I point that out. I felt a lot of pressure to talk about my community as a whole to people, which I dealt with in a kind of a unique way where I kind of said, hey, I just don't speak for everyone. My experience is mine. And, if you talk to another person that has, that happens to be a man of trans experience or a transgender person, because it's an umbrella term, just because someone's transgender doesn't mean that they medically transition or want to do any of that. So I had to do a lot of education. I felt left out a lot, and I kind of still feel due to a degree, because I feel when you're outside the norm of what people expect, they tend to ask less questions about your life. So a lot of people never ask if I have children. They don't really go in very deep because I think they're just nervous to find out the answers, or they don't see that as like in the realms of possibility for me or people like me. People said a lot of jokes around me, and a lot of times because I pass well, people don't realize what I am. So, I got to witness or hear a lot of jokes about queer people because the people didn't think I thought in that category or sat in that category, or I heard a lot of jokes about, women or gender or things like that. And because I'm kind of invisible now, I look just like any other guy that walks around, people tend to let their guard down and just kind of say what they really feel. So I had to really navigate a lot of that stuff. And the other part of it is really, I have to come out over and over again a lot of the time. So, and people will say, well, Ari, why did you do that? And I say, well, a lot of times people make assumptions about my life that aren't correct. And for me not to disclose that about me really at the end of the day hurts me. It makes me feel less genuine. It makes me feel less safe. So for me, I have to be honest with people and just really say, hey, you made this assumption about me, but it's not really true. So, I haven't lived that experience my entire life. Or when people make assumptions about what I can do based on what I look like, it's like, oh no, and I have to go through it all. So it's a very interesting place to sit in life, because at the end of the day, it really truly debunks a lot of things that people say. I always tell folks, like, how people treat you is how they perceive you. And I kind of feel like just through my lived experience, I prove that. There was a point in time in my life where you couldn't tell what gender I was by looking at me, and how people treated me was very different than how people treat me now. So, and just so you have like a little education, how often do, LGBTQ employees have to come out to work? And a lot of times 50% of people that were surveyed have to do it at least once a week, because people make assumptions. You'll say, hey, how's your, they'll assume you're straight, or ask you how your husband is, when really you're not married to a man, right? So it's just things like that. It's just really subtle things where people are like, well, no, that's not my experience. And then, of course, in terms of people who are out, you're going to see less junior level people be out because they're not as secure in their career. And that's largely why I stayed in the closet as long as I did. And this to me just represents facts. And women are also less likely to be out at work as well if they happen to be LGBTQIA. So anyways, this kind of leads into a couple of slides I'm going to just talk about very quickly. Leading, I told you my why. I really try to be a change agent because I want the water industry to be accepting of all people. I want everyone to have a place here. So I can only change or influence what I control. And that's what I do here at Black & Beach and wherever I am. So we have employee resource groups. So I started the Pride one, and you're seeing some of our logoing there. I like the hashtag #BU. It's like my favorite thing ever. A lot of what we do is we provide education to our professionals. So, we did a whole session about what it's like to be a queer person working in STEM, and what some of the stereotypes that we face, and just try to debunk some of that. We have allies that have their own experiences with the community and share that with other allies. So it's not just people constantly coming to people like me asking questions. It's actually allies telling allies, how can you be a better ally? So we do a lot of that kind of stuff. We had fun in June. We provide all kinds of educational materials for people, virtual ways to celebrate and understand the community. So what you're looking at is we made a little guide for people to learn from at work. This was all done at Black & Beach at work. And we even did a cute little bingo where people can come and say, hey, during COVID, we got a little creative where we said, hey, stocked up on wine and other beverages. And then I guess apparently a lot of people bleached their hair during COVID. So that actually had to be a space on the card. But this was like little events that people can engage with us. And what it did is it brought people in, and it made people feel safe, which is what I value. It drew people in, and people really enjoyed it. We got a lot of really good ally attendance, a lot of really good questions. And I really feel that this helped build some safety within queer folks. And actually that this first event we ever did, I got so many messages from people saying, hey, I actually feel safe to be where I work for the first time. And I've worked here for 15 years or something like that. So had a lot of fun, did a lot of chalk events, really tried to create a sense of where people could be expressive with their pride and just who they are. And if you didn't have chalk, we broke out a tractor and just had some posters because we're inclusive. We don't care how you want to engage with us. We got a lot of t-shirts, and we raised a lot of money. We sent a lot of money to the Trevor Project, which is an organization that helps LGBT youth to reduce suicide rates amongst those groups, and a bunch of other places like OSTEM, which is a queer engineering group. Marched together. Of course, it's pre-COVID. So we had lots of fun with each other. And it was a lot of fun because most of these people in this picture are not in the community. They really just come out for support. And it really made a lot of people feel safe and loved. And that's really what I'm all about. So big career moment for me. This led to me winning what Black & Beach calls the CEO Aspire Impact Award. And it's for the ultimate culture change. changer within or change agent within Black and Veatch. Honestly, I don't do it for the award. The only thing I'm happy about with this award is that I asked them to change the name of it because it used to be this chairman's award. And I wanted people within my organization to realize that you don't have to be a chairman to achieve it. So it really became an educational thing that I could do for my organization to start having them think in an inclusive way, to start thinking about language. So for me, that was really kind of a big deal. What you're seeing here is a little screen capture of a message that I got from somebody who basically thanking me and others in the group for sharing my story because they were able to actually connect with their child and have their child be able to be who they are at home. Because at the end of the day, folks, that's how I look at it. If I influence one person, then that person influences 10 others around them. And it's just kind of like a cascade effect. So that's why I do what I do in terms of trying to be a change agent in an organization and in the industry, because I want everyone to feel safe. I've just watched too many people within my community that were part of this industry that left because they didn't feel safe here. So big moment for me, transitioning, I became a professional operator. So this is me kind of a couple of years into my transition. And I have to say, I'm really thankful for ABC because they were very understanding about my name not matching a lot of my documents and just really understanding in general. And that's how I was able to become a professional operator. I was able to just send in all my stuff. They were able to verify it. And if you don't know, I have to take a test through ABC. And it's the highest level of certification you really can get outside of getting a state certification. So that was a really happy moment for me. I was like, finally, I got a class 4 drinking water license in the industry. And I was able to do it being who I was. I didn't really have to disclose or feel ashamed that I had documents that didn't have, my preferred name on them. And I think that says a lot for that organization. So like I told you, I'm a director at large. So you kind of seeing this progression in my I feel accomplishments just because of showing up. And I won the director at large showing up as I am. AWWA knows my past. In fact, when I worked there, I disclosed to them that I was a trans person and they were fine with it. But I always want to say the power of one. And if you don't know Michelle Stockness, she's in Minnesota section. She works for a company called Bar Engineering. And I love her because she's a great ally to all people, and she wants different people to be a part of the board. And she actually encouraged me to apply. I didn't think it was possible. I kind of felt like, I don't really feel like I belong here. I don't feel that my perspective really be valued here. But Michelle was like, no, we need people like you, Ari. Like, I love it. And that's like where I go back to that power of one. When you have those people that are in your corner, it's really great. And if you could be that for somebody else, I say do it. So I am a director of large for the association. I am hopefully going to get the chance to run as a VP at the winter board meeting. We'll see. So here we are in the future and it's bright. And if you know that reference, you and I will be friends for life. But basically, like I said, I'm running for VP for AWWA, hopefully. I run a website called The Wandering Water Bear, where I supply content on inclusive topics. So I definitely would enjoy, you checking out the page and letting me know what you think. I'm hoping to start developing a podcast. I'm going to be on a podcast pretty soon called Human Realness Podcast. It's with an HR professional here in Kansas City. And we're just going to talk about life and exciting things. And I don't know, I really enjoy just reaching out to different people and being able to share any kind of perspective that I can. So, and of course, Wall and Wanda, they're my 2 water bears. As you can see in the picture, they definitely approve of everything that's going on. So that's just a little snapshot of the website and just some of the blog content that I have on it. I'm definitely working on some videos and some other stuff because I definitely want to help the industry be more inclusive and just really anyone in general. So anyways, I want to wrap this up really quick. So I just want to give you just 5 or 6 things that I've learned in my life. And I think I'll probably just maybe end here because I don't want to go over my time, but just some lived experience lessons. Find your why, find your career focus. Don't let people tell you that you can't do the job you want or that the job that you want to do is is not as valid as another job. Engineers, operators, all of it, customer service people, it takes all kinds of people to make this industry go around. If you have a passion, I say follow it. Be proud. You are enough. Took me really way too long to get to that point in my life. And you do it by practicing it. I've had to really practice a long time to say, nope, I'm proud of who I am. I don't need to be ashamed of who I am. I am who I am. What I am is great. Be open, be vulnerable. I was a little vulnerable with you all, but I do it a lot. So I've become more comfortable with it. Challenge yourself, try to have a growth mindset, try to be curious about other people, as long as it's in a respectful way. And I always encourage people to give back. That's embrace difference, just give back to others. If you can give people your time, that's really the most valuable thing. You never get it back. And just have fun and take work seriously, but not yourself. And Wal and Wanda, they definitely agree with that. They came to the council summit with me recently at the AWW Council Summit. They were a hit. Everyone loved them. So it was really, really great stuff. And that was our Halloween costume this year. I dressed up as a water bear and I just said, hey, you know what? I love these stuffed animals and I'm just going to, embody it. So I did want to go to here and just let you know that I am doing a TikTok contest for new students and YPs. So I really am passionate about getting new people into the organization, to AWWA and the water industry. And I really would like to, I'm going to try to sponsor 10 students and 1 YP. I'm going to pay for 1 year of their membership. And all they have to do is actually post a TikTok video. I actually learned how to use TikTok. It made me feel extremely old, but that's okay. But really all they need to do is follow my LinkedIn post down there. And if I select them, they'll get a free 1 year AWW membership and 1 year of mentoring from me, which depending on you look at that, that's either a plus or a minus. I don't know. I'm thinking it's a plus, but anyways, I'd like to just really end on that. And if you have any students or anyone in mind, or if you want more information, just send me a note. That's me. That's my LinkedIn address. And thank you so much for letting me be a part of your day.
Awesome, Ari. Thank you so much for bringing yourself to this space. And like you said, for being vulnerable, it's never easy. So we're really grateful that you took the time to share these very personal stories with us. So thank you so much. We're at time, but I feel like I would like to take the power and give you some space for people to ask you any questions. So we'll take 5 to 10 minutes. If folks can stay with us a little bit longer, we'd love for you to stay with us. We do have some questions that were submitted through Eventbrite, and I'd love for anybody who has questions, post it in the chat, or also feel free to unmute yourself. But I'll start off with this one question, which I think is just so fundamental to to being a human being and being inclusive to people from all diverse backgrounds. And this is a question from Eventbrite. Somebody asked, what are some of the actions that allies could take to support the queer and transgender community?
Sure, there's lots of things you can do. For one, just, using pronouns, like just getting in the habit of doing it. I get that it's awkward, and honestly, it took me some time to do, but it really helps normalize that so other people can share theirs, because not everyone identifies as a he or she. So I think that's a big plus. That makes people feel safe that they can come as they are, especially our non-binary or gender expansive folks who also fit under the transgender umbrella. So I'm binary, so I don't have that issue, but I know other people will do. So I think just being understanding, listening, trying to take away barriers for people. So like where I work, a lot of the time that we spent on the priority and the education actually went to help get trans inclusive healthcare added to our health benefits, which literally costs very little money to do. And a lot of that was advocated by allies. It wasn't just me, it was people saying, hey, we value this, we want this, it's important, it's going to impact not only people like me, but, people who have, children or dependents. I mean, it really goes past just you. And that's what I always try to say. I think the best thing allies can do is work on speaking inclusively, not making assumptions about people. And if you do, just own it and you say, hey, I made a mistake and I'm just going to try harder. And that's really humbling, I think. When people say that or use that language, I know that they're open to correction and, just learning, like show things and just learn and Google things and just be conscious about questions you ask. Like, if it's not a question that you would probably ask a cisgender person, which just means someone who's not trans, then you probably shouldn't ask me that, at least, especially about physical things like surgeries and body changes and stuff like that, because that is very personal. People do tend to get fixated on that, but that's not really the most important part about being a trans person. So that's my advice.
So use inclusive language.
Yep.
Learn from
Yep.
your mistakes and keep learning.
Yep.
And try to create a more inclusive place in your workspace through either policies or having more conversations around being a more welcoming environment for everyone.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so I wanted to switch over to the chat to see if we had any questions, but there's just a lot of gratitude in the chat. Best shirt ever. I do like that shirt.
Yeah. Thanks.
And I wanted to open it up to anyone in our group here who is willing to just turn on your camera, and if you feel like, and unmute yourself to ask any questions that you may have.
Hi, my name is Tia Johnson. I have a question.
Sure.
You had mentioned that you worked previously with individuals who were incarcerated. Those are individuals that I currently hire in my company.
Okay.
I wanted to know how I could, I guess, connect them to different resources. So in a nutshell, kind of maybe to clarify, we clean the trash cans, like your roll down containers and dumpsters. Like we have a truck that does that.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I learned going into the business is it protects water. So I'm in this new space of environmental awareness, and I want my team to also be aware, but I don't have the knowledge or resources that you have. How can we be more connected so that as we grow, it will give them opportunities to be bigger than a person that cleans trash cans?
Oh, I get what you're saying. So trying to connect the importance of their work basically to the environment, more or less. Yeah, I mean, a lot of time, I don't know. I'm just trying to equate it to what I understand, because there's a lot of times I'm interfacing with new operators, right? Like for example, at the plant I'm at, most of the staff is never operated a treatment plant in their entire life. They're like literally, I just took my certification exam and found myself a job, Ari. I don't even know what you're talking about. So a lot of what I do is like through demonstration. So, I walk them through the plant and I try to tell them, hey, if we don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And at the end of the day, I try to connect sanitation to protecting human health and elevating the importance of that. Because if they didn't take the trash away, the trash would end up in the street or in the waterway or in whatever. So even though it seems like a job that's kind of, not important, it's a very important job. So that's kind of how I link it to my younger operators. And to just tell you, when I used to teach in the prison, that was all remotely through a community college that's located in Florida. So a lot of those folks are always looking for jobs, obviously, because it's harder for someone who has been incarcerated to get employment, even in our industry because of background checks. So I think just really connecting them to saying, hey, if you didn't do this job, this is what the world would look like, generally helps most people understand that. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It does, yes.
Okay.
So that's kind of the mission. I guess, how can we stay connected to the resources that you guys offer?
So if you're talking about AWWA or the association, we have a website. It's www.awwa.org. And then the Ohio section probably has a website. I don't know it off the top of my head. I'm sure someone could like dump it in the chat. But yeah, I mean, I think that's really it, is just kind of, and I think part of it is really providing your folks education. I don't know if your name is Tia. I think I missed your name, but I think it's providing them continuous education to just keep them connected to that mission, right? That's kind of how I look at it. It's like, hey, if we didn't do this, this is what the world would look like. And that's what I do with operators. I said, hey, if you didn't take this sample today, the river that's downstream may look like, you know, a river that's full of dead fish. It's just like constantly kind of reminding why we're doing this. So, but AWW can help with that if you go to www.awwa.org. That's a good place to go. And if you want to talk to me, I can also, I think I just dumped my email address into the chat too. So I can help you offline as well. So I think we got a question in the chat. Milwaukee Metropolitan District has removed the box from the application. Not
from Jane Clark. Do you have any tips for someone who is interested in becoming a licensed operator before or during as an environmental engineer? I've come to learn that's not the usual career path for engineers. What kind of obstacles or funkiness might I have to navigate?
Yeah, so depending where you live, because state licensing in operation is dictated by usually a state entity. They all have different rules and requirements to become a licensed operator. So for example, in Florida, I actually had to operate a plant for 5 years before I could get a grade 4 drinking water license. So some places will let you sub education for experience, but generally when engineers try to get certified as an operator, that's the biggest barrier for them, is that they don't have working experience. So what I did is I just offered my services to utility, and I just volunteered for years until I racked up enough hours and someone was willing to sign off on my time to get a license. So that way I kind of navigated that system. So I think for you, you're just going to run into the same barrier where the licensing agency is going to look at your application and say, oh, well, did you work as an engineer? Well, we don't count that time because that's not actually operating. That's the biggest barrier for you, I think, if that's the way you want to go. So
could you clarify what you mean when you say so you literally just volunteered your time, like when you weren't working, night shifts, weekends?
Yeah, I worked weekends a lot. I worked night shift quite a bit. Some of my project work, I think I talked about those pilots. Florida doesn't care what the size of the treatment plant is. They care about the duties, because the pilots I were running were actually bigger than some full-scale facilities in Florida. So I was able to kind of get some of my time written off on by operating the pilots, even though I wasn't discharging into a collection system or into a distribution system or something like that. So each state is kind of different depending on their take of operations. So I don't know, I'm not that familiar with Ohio EPA or wherever you're sitting, but generally I can look at the rules and help you out there if that would be helpful. So yeah,
I would love to talk to you more about that.
yeah, just send me an email. I'm certified in a couple states, and I've kind of navigated certification, so I can at least put you in the right direction.
And Ari has included his email in the chat, thewanderingwaterbear@gmail.com. So you can from there.
Yep.
So we're right at time. But I see Danita, you have a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi Ari. It's good
Hi.
to see you again. Great presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Good.
So my question is around chapter development within AWA and establishing diversity and inclusion committees. You know, I think everyone will always see a D&I committee through their own lens. So how do you maximize a committee like D&I to really serve the membership, you know, status quo, as well as challenging them to be better versions of themselves?
Yeah, you know, when I talk to people in general, generally what gets people's attention is when I say, hey, DEI is investment in you. Like, these skills actually are an investment into your own personal growth and development, because the more that you actually look at people as, you know, look at people as people, but understand people's differences and what they bring to the table and all that, makes your job a lot easier. That's all. All I want to do when I'm talking about at work is I want to find what are people good at, what are people aren't, what are people not strong at, and then what are the barriers that are preventing people from really achieving their, how do I say this, their maximum abilities. That's how I get it. And when I look at it from a supervisor's point of view, if I eliminate barriers for people, a lot of times those barriers apply to me too. So I'm actually making my life easier by leveraging these people to be able to do what they want to do. So and I'm kind of a communicator, so it's kind of something that just comes naturally to me. But for other people, I say, hey, if you learn this language to talk to people as people and understand where they're coming from and at least listen and kind of show some kind of grace and that you care, right? And that you're a work in progress, because we all are. I've misgendered people. Everyone on this call probably has, not knowing it. And kind of taking that humility and stepping forward actually makes you a better leader. More people are going to follow you, and that is going to make your job easier. So that's kind of how I frame it. Even if you do not buy into it at all, I've gotten people on board because they see how people's reactions change. So I just try to say, hey, DE&I is part of everything that we do. My goal is to not have to say DE&I. I want to say this is the lens that we look through the world always, and it's part of us. And if I can develop a behavior that where you listen to people and address them the way you want to be and understand that their barriers and concerns that they have, and you're able to try to advocate for those, you're going to see a better work. It's going to be a happy work time or a happy volunteer time for you, right? Instead of, right. Because no one wants resistance. I mean, I enjoy resistance because I'm not uncomfortable by it because of my life. But most people do not like resistance. So anyways, that's my advice. It's just really trying to spin it in a way that it really benefits you to take on these behaviors. It's development for you to take on these behaviors. And then seeing other people, seeing a change in how people respond to you. So I don't know if that makes sense or is helpful, but that's kind of how I've gotten some people to kind of get on board with it.
Yeah, and I think it's like too, and how you keep people motivated who are doing the work, because I think people expect to see some type of physical or change that they can, or tangible change that they can just put a finger on.
Right.
And so when progress is slow, how do you keep the people who are in it to win it motivated?
I'm with you. Trust me. I get what I feel what you're saying. Trust me, I felt what you said for most of the year. And I think for me, I've just gotten to a point where I've accepted that, the work that I do, I may never see the outcome too. It's not going to be within my lifetime. If we're talking about systematic change, that's for people like me, that's probably not doable. So I kind of push towards at least getting people treating each other with respect, addressing people the way they want to, trying to speak inclusively and understanding from a historical context why that matters and what that means. And I think for a lot of people, they just don't understand. They just say words and they have no idea what the historical context of them are and how hurtful they are, right? I like to think most people, once you explain to them, they're like, oh, I had no idea. Oops. And they try to work on that. And I'm one of those people. Like, for me, I've tried to avoid saying the word crazy or nuts or loony or, you know what I mean? Like those words are not great words. And they have, in some cases, medical meanings to those words. So I try not to use them at all. So, you know what I mean? It's even my progression. I use that as an example where I'm saying, hey, look at me. I used to do this all the time. And now I don't. I don't use the word special anymore to refer to people. Like, not good. So I kind of just tell people, hey, it's not about how you perceive the world. If you want to be an effective leader or effective supervisor, you have to start understanding how other people around you perceive the world. Because if you say something that's like sexist, even if you don't mean it, and that half of the women or people sitting in the room are female identified, well, you've just turned off half of the people in your room. Does it make a difference if you believe it or not? Not really. You should just evaluate what comes out of your mouth. Because they're not going to want to work with you. So that's it. But yeah, I'm with you. I think sometimes you just have to take it one day at a time and just realize that you didn't create this problem, right? You're just here trying to fix whatever you can while you're here. So.
We have one more question that popped up in the chat. It's
Sure.
from Megan. I'll let Megan ask this question so that I'm not speaking for people here. Megan, do you feel comfortable asking the question?
Yeah, so do you have any tips on, if you're meeting someone for the first time, like in this example, I was teaching a class and it was, very quick where I wasn't really totally sure if this person identified as female, male, or neither. Like how to kind of like manage the pronoun situation. So I just dealt with it by calling them by their name, but it's just kind of hard. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, like I kind of said, I kind of just get in the habit of trying to say, hi, my name is Ari. I go by he, him, his. How about you? To everybody, not just to people I don't know how they identify.
Okay.
Yeah, it just helps normalize it. That's one way of going about it. Or you can even just say, hi, my name is Megan. What's your name? How do you prefer that I refer to you? However you want to do it. As a trans person, sometimes it's triggering because you feel like you stand out. Like people used to ask me all the time. You're talking to somebody who was called a he, a she, an it, a that, a what. People have called me a lot of things in my day. So I was always kind of hypersensitive to that, depending on when I was in my transition. Now I don't care. But I think just if you can get in the habit of say, hey, and if you really aren't sure, just say, hey, my name's Megan. I go by she. How about you? And then it normalizes that person to say, hey, my name is blah, blah, blah. And I go by they, them, or not, right? Or whatever they prefer to be referred to as. So I think that's one way where you could kind of put it off that person and not make them feel like, oh, she's asking me this because of what I look like, or they're not.
Yeah.
If you self-identify, then that takes the pressure off. And if they don't say, hey, then they're not comfortable, then I would just either use their name maybe until that's kind of an awkward space too. I find most people, if you give them that option, they'll take it. They'll say, oh yeah, my name's Ari and I go by they, them, theirs, or he, whatever it ends up being, right? So I think that's a good route to go. So.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure, no problem.
We have one more question, but I wanted us to do our traditional selfies here.
Yeah.
Before people drop off. So if
sure,
people mind turning on their cameras or just make whatever background you want to, and I'll just take a quick screenshot. This is our little nerdy community thing that we do.
I love it.
All right, so I will take the screenshot on 3. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Oh, I like the tongue. I'll take another one so that we make sure we got our best sides. All right, 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Thank you. This has been a really fruitful discussion, and I feel like we need to have another session where it's just discussion with like all of our guests, because there's just like so much, like I'm so proud of like the safe space that we've been able to create for each other, to have these really like vulnerable conversations and really just like honest, authentic conversations. So this one question here, which I think is really important and very relevant to your experience, is, you talked about some of the challenges that you've experienced of being trans in the water space. How do you think in an ideal world, well, not in an ideal world, but how should these be addressed? What are some of the challenges and how can they be addressed with the idea of systemic change, like you said? Like, it's nice to use, inclusive language and stuff like that, but until our structures don't change, we won't be able to create these inclusive spaces that we're, essentially advocating for.
Right. Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I mean, we definitely live in a society that does not like anything that's supposed to be masculine being perceived as feminine. And truly, like, that is like a real thing. So a lot of times when I talk about my experience, I kind of feel that it's not as bad, because I went from, being perceived as female to being perceived as male, which is what's preferred in our industry. So I really do sit from a place of, I can just do whatever I want now for the most part and get away with it. And it's true. And I have, just to prove it. So, I'm like, oh, well, if I did this, could I have behaved this way in my previous life? And usually the answer is no, I wouldn't have been successful. They would have given me a label, like I'm too aggressive or I'm too problematic or whatever you want to put in there. But yeah, I mean, for trans people, I mean, you just got to stop. I think the key is it's just breaking down barriers that we face on a societal scale. And a lot of that is employment, access to healthcare. That's a really big one. Like, people don't get that. I mean, I've spent at least $100,000 of my own funds to be okay. So, and the average person who's like me is either underemployed or underemployed. Most trans people are unemployed 3 times higher rates than cisgender counterparts. They can't get work. So I think anytime if you're looking at a company or you're looking at it, really anything, it's really trying to provide trans people access to things they need. I mean, just healthcare, a living wage or a wage in general, and just respect, dignity. I mean, it's really hard to have to worry about going to work and trying to say, well, what bathroom am I using today? Am I going to have violence if I enter that space or not? Are people going to be mean to me? I mean, I was really lucky where I worked. That really wasn't a big deal. No one cared. But, when I was out in a public setting, there's a lot of times where I would actually not drink water all day long to avoid that situation. It's not good for me. So, but that's very common. So just really making sure that people have access to what they need. And for some trans people, having an option to go to a gender neutral bathroom or a unisex bathrooms takes away a lot of that stuff. Just making sure that people dress people properly. I mean, changing name tags and labels on their desk and just talking to people through that and just telling people not to be scared of people like me, because that's really what it is. It's fear. When I interface with people, like some of you maybe you've never met another trans person. I don't know what your experience is, but a lot of times when I'm talking to people, I'm the only trans person that's self-identifying that they know. So I'm either greeted by, oh, that's very interesting, or I didn't know that, or they have experience, or I'm flat out greeted with fear and confusion and just flat out disgust sometimes. So, I mean, I've had people just tell me wow, you fooled me, or, that you're not really male. I don't look at you that way, and would say things to try to take away the identity that I hold to myself. So I think a lot of it has to start, we have to start getting people to stop fearing people like me. There's nothing to fear about me. It's just I'm different. I'm a man, but I'm in a different format. You know, trans women are women, they're just in a different format. And it's okay to be friends with people like me, like them, whatever. Yep. I think, Dana, do you have a question? I see your hand just went up. So. Oh, I can't hear you, Dana.
Dana.
I was clapping for what you said.
Yeah, like, I mean, trans people experience a lot of violence. I mean, this year alone, I think this is the highest recorded murders of trans people ever recorded this year. So like, and like people say, oh, Ari, well, you know, those people, you know, they're doing bad things or selling drugs or whatever they're doing things they need to do because they can't get a job. Like that's, no one wants that stuff. So I think trying to debunk the fear that surrounds people like me is really the key to changing everything. And that's why I do educational things where I work, because a lot of times when I'm dealing with people, even people within my organization now, most of the part, they're cool, but I've been greeted by a couple people who either just fear me or have a lot of misconceptions about what I am and what my life is like. And breaking those down has definitely gotten us from, you know, fear to like understanding and to some acceptance. They may not agree with what I am, but they're not going to stand in my way. And that's really kind of the key. So I don't know if that answers that question really well, but I think you got to just start breaking down the fear and that people like me are unusual or wrong, or if you're friends with me or you're attracted to me or whatever it is, that's wrong and disgusting, right? That's really where it comes from.
I think you bring up a big part of what you're trying to do to, like, you know, dismantle that kind of fear and those misconceptions is actually talking to people and helping them understand. But just, I think when there's an opportunity for people to just see you for who you are, just a human being, I think part of that is what undoes some of that fear at the end of the day. But it also does put you in a vulnerable situation because you have to do a lot of the emotional labor, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it puts a target on your back. Been there. So yeah, I mean, it's like it's either you have labor or you meet the wrong person. And unfortunately for someone like me, that can have a very, very negative outcome.
Yeah, and it can happen quickly.
Yep. Most people like me that are murdered because people find them on their LinkedIn accounts, their Twitter accounts, their social media accounts. It's a real thing.
Yes, it is.
Yep. So it's just brave to just do what you do. So, I mean, it is what it is. I accept.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like, I can't control people. It's what it is. I got to live my life. Got to be who I am. That's just who I'm going to, that's just me. I'm just going to do that. I don't have no other way to live. So, but I mean, that's part of it. It's really, you got to get rid of that fear. And if you have employees that have that fear, then some of it's just kind of debunking some of those stereotypes and why that fear is there, because there's no reason to fear people like me. And what I found is people who fear me generally project onto me, meaning that they have issues around gender expression. And that's okay. I get that. Like, I'm like, okay, I get it. It's scary for you too. Or maybe they have a trans kid and they're scared of what that means for them, but it's still fear and it's still a problem, because that's not going to be good outcome for their, you know, family members. So that's why I try to just say, okay, I get it. You're scared, but I'm going to give you lots of reasons to love me versus hate me or be fearful of me, because I'm just like you.
Yeah. Just like you. Exactly. Well, Ari, this has been an extremely eye-opening and warm conversation. Thank you again.
Sure. Happy to do it.
For bringing yourself to our little space here. And for everyone else here, thank you so much for your time, for taking the time to listen to Ari's story and learning from him. And we hope that you have some lessons that you can take to your friends, your family, and to your workplace. And with that, wish you all a lovely evening and a great rest of the year, and we'll see you January 13th. All right, take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye, everyone.
Cool. The last four.